Welcome to My Healing is Your Healing, a podcast for the woman who is ready to stop performing and reclaim her voice. I'm your host, Celeste, and around here, we don't do surface level. We go deep. Each week, we'll explore concepts like self-discovery, radical honesty, and the kind of healing that rewrites your story from the inside out. This is a space for truth-telling, for remembering who you are, and for coming home to yourself, louder, braver, and more radiant than ever. So come as you are, and let's do this together. Let's begin. Welcome, Ginny, to My Healing is Your Healing. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I feel very lucky that I get to have you here because I feel like this is a really fun topic and you already get to talk about it all day, every day on your podcast. So this is going to be awesome.
Oh, it's a treat.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to dig right in. And I want to talk about this unsubscribe culture that you're building and what causes it in this quote unquote scripted life that we've been handed, that we live through all the time.
Well, for me, it kind of stems from this point in my life where I felt like I was trying to be everything to everybody. My story kind of is rooted in narcissistic abuse. I grew up in a narcissistic household. I chose a narcissist as a partner, and he was basically living a double life. So at that point, I was doing everything. I had the big fancy corporate job. I was traveling for work. I was maintaining my friendships, being a good partner, a stepmom for better, for all intents and purposes, doing school pickup and drop off and packing lunches and doing the grocery shopping, making sure the house was clean and the lawn was mowed and the laundry, right? Like everything. And in hindsight, what I realized is I was being what I thought everybody else thought I should be, not in alignment with myself.
I feel that a lot. Okay, I'm so curious because you have to do all of that stuff when you're single, right? But when you have a partner, how does that expectation change?
Well, in my case, it didn't change at all. I mean, I think that there should be shared, household duties and, financial conversations where things are, split in a way that feels comfortable for everybody. That I think that part would fall in the manage pillar of unsubscribe, the filter that I've developed to help people make decisions around the things that are important and that do need attention. So for me, I don't know that I have the right answer for that, but certainly those should be conversations, had in every household.
So you work with a lot of high achieving women. Where do you see this hustle culture quietly crossing the line from ambition into self-abandonment?
Oh, I think that happens all too often. I think especially for high achieving women, like you said, women in leadership roles or just high achieving, high performing, they want to do well. There's often this misalignment in looking successful on the outside, like looking like we have it all together, but quietly, like inside, that doesn't match. We're tired. The person that wrote the endorsement for the book, she said, this is the book for women that feel successful on the outside but are tired in their bones. And when I got that back from her, I just like had goosebumps because I feel like that's so relatable. And I've had men that have gotten their copies of the book already that have opened it and read that and they're like, that's me too. So it's not just for high achieving women. I mean, it's really for anybody. It's such a universal language. It creates this common language for people.
I agree with that. And I feel like a lot of these topics are not just for women. I host a bunch of women's groups and I like to talk about it in the capacity for women just because we have our own stories, because there's things that happen that are specific as a woman. But as people are reading my book called Becoming the Radiant Woman and like men are reading it, they're like, oh, that speaks to me too. Why can't I read this book? So I totally get that. And we were talking about self-worth this month in the women's group. And I feel like what you were saying drives a lot of that too, where, disappointing other people and wanting to make sure that you are like this version of yourself that everyone else expects. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Like, where does that come from?
Well, I definitely think what you're talking about in, trying to be everything to everybody and disappointing others, like these coping mechanisms is really what they are, right? People pleasing, perfectionism, and that all leads into that whole concept of overfunctioning and trying to carry all of the weight. And you talked about hustle culture, right? Like this whole concept of being busy. Everybody's busy, but are we actually being productive? To me, I think the problem is that we are busy focusing on too much of the wrong things, like worrying about disappointing others. You can't control if other people are going to be disappointed in what you're doing, so you might as well just be yourself. And so I think that's where a lot of this comes to, and it becomes so relatable because I think that we've all found ourselves in these situations at some point or another.
I think so too. I want to go back to what you were saying about success because I remember sitting at the dinner table when I was probably 8 and listening to what my parents thought success was, right? And how it has influenced my life from then to now. And they were both professors. So, getting a terminal college degree and being a doctor of something was always that thing. And especially when you're relating to other people, if they didn't have a degree, that was kind of looked down on. So, what was your idea of success at your dinner table when you were 8?
So I actually talk about this in the book a little bit. My dad, my dad was my guy, and unfortunately, he passed away 5 years ago. But I use him as inspiration for so many things, and that's one of the things is, it was the same for me. It was you get the call, you get good grades, and then you go to a good college and you get a degree, and then you get a good job, and then you work really hard and you work the longest and you get all the awards, and then you get promoted and you get more of a salary, and that's what success was defined as, for me, and I think so much of my generation, right? Like it was very linear, and I feel like we are at a place and a point in time where we're kind of blowing that up. And to
Yeah.
me, I think people now value success as being in alignment with yourself, doing things that are meaningful, that provide value, that feel like, your work is your purpose. For me, I now am surrounded by so many people that we work in roles that are in service of others and helping others and having slow mornings and being able to sit with your cup of coffee in the morning and read a book or not just jump right into this rat race and that hustle culture that we talked about. I think people are redefining what success looks like for them, and I am here to celebrate it.
Me too. I will applaud that. Because for the longest time, it felt like we're just on this conveyor belt with every single other person. And even I want to say through 2010, maybe, if you said, stop, I want to get off this conveyor belt, everyone looked at you like you were crazy, right? What do you think has really changed? Because I mean, it's not just surrounding yourself by those people, like everybody else's mindsets also have to change.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It is a mindset shift, right? And it's not for everybody. It's not to say that, I have to always be careful about this because my number one job is keynote speaking. And if I'm going into a company, I can't be like, "Hey, nobody should work in corporate. Everybody should go do their thing." It's not about that. It's not about blowing up your life. It's not about leaving corporate or leaving the job that you're in, but maybe it's just looking at things from a different mindset and from a different lens and looking at what actually lights you up and how can you kind of do both, because I think we also live in a world where things are very polarized, right? Where people think everything is black and white or and this or that, but two things can be true at once. And I think it's just a matter of how we look at those things and how we incorporate them into our own lives and figure out what works for you.
I think that's so true. But I also think that a lot of people don't question until they've hit a point. And I don't know if we want to call it rock bottom or like that curve in the road that you find yourself at that makes you have to change. Because otherwise, people are just sitting on the couch, dissociating, watching TV, and drinking their wine until they have to.
Yeah, and hey, look, there's nothing wrong with me sitting on my couch on Friday night drinking my wine, which I will be doing. But at the same time, I think you're right. Like that's definitely how it happened for me was, I had this man living in my house with his two kids, and I came home one day to find out that he was living a double life. He was a fraud in every way, and it shattered me. I mean, it really did. It shattered me to my core. It imploded my life. And I think when something like that happens, you can go a couple of different directions, right? You can keep going the way that you were. I think a lot of people in my situation could have become jaded and gotten a chip on their shoulder. For me, I wanted to use that story to really do that deep reflection and figure out what were my behaviors? Why was I attracting this? Why did I allow this in my life? And so I made a lot of big changes. I started meditating, which I would have laughed at anyone that meditated before. And it has really changed my life. I started journaling and doing affirmations. I became vulnerable because I used to think that vulnerability was looked at as a weakness. And now I see what a strength it is, how it helps with human connection and making people feel seen and heard and not alone, which has become such an important part of the work that I do today. So, yeah, and that's definitely how it happened for me was that moment, that turning point in my life.
I love that. I love hearing people's turning point because you can always sit in that victim mode and just say, why is this happening to me? Or you can say, what is this going to do for me? How can I use this to my advantage? And so, yeah, you did just that. You talk about unsubscribing from expectations. How do people begin to recognize which expectations are truly theirs versus ones they'd inherited or absorbed?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, kind of those societal norms. And are we just going through the motions? And I think people then aren't really tapping into how they're feeling about things. And that's really why, like, I wish I had the pillars and unsubscribe when I was going through what I was at that time, completely over functioning, trying to be everything to everybody while experiencing this psychologically and emotionally abusive relationship at home. And so for me, I was going through the motions and I wasn't really tapped into how I felt. And so with Unsubscribe, it's really designed to be an actionable tool to give you accountability, to look at those expectations and go, okay, is this just something? Am I going through the motions? How does this feel for me? Right. And that's why I have workbook sections at the end of each chapter so that you can really tap into that and go, okay, what do I need to manage? What do I need to swap here? What do I need to mute? And what do I completely need to block that is not mine at all? Or no longer is mine. It no longer serves me or no longer works. So yeah.
I think that's a really great format because it's you read it and then you put it into action.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we miss, and that's where the accountability and the reflection comes into play, right? It's not just unsubscribe isn't just blowing everything up and walking away and just like walking away from everything flippantly. It really is designed to be a tool for you to take action and have accountability and pay attention to how you feel. So I give specific examples on, if you're going to mute something and take a temporary break, how long are you going to take that temporary break? Is it a day, 7 days, 30 days, and then come back to it and pay attention to how you feel and then decide what is my next step in, with this particular thing or person, whatever it is that you're, dealing with or thinking about how you need to unsubscribe.
I love this. This has already convinced me that I need to buy the book. Even though I've gone through a lot of this already, I feel like it would be helpful just to continue that momentum.
Well, and for some people, they love to have, the hard copy and, especially for writing things down. So it is available both in an ebook and a paperback.
Okay. So we're going to grab the link from you before we hop off and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Amazing. So, in relationships specifically, how does overgiving slowly erode intimacy rather than strengthen it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think when you overgive, I think that goes back to the people pleasing. We talked about some of these coping mechanisms. And when you are giving everything that you have, and look, relationships, I think it's like Michelle Obama, she talked once about how marriage or relationships are never 50-50. It's like you can't think about it that way. There's always going to be some influx of one person having a great day and the other one not, right? Like so I don't think we can ever think of relationships as 50-50, but when you are just over giving in every area of your life, including your relationships, and I actually do this exercise in my keynotes from time to time where especially if it's a group of women, I will have them write down the top 5 most important people in your life. So, Celeste, who are the top 5 most important people in your life?
My friend Melanie, my friend Erin, my mom, my dad, and my sibling.
And where are you on that list?
Oh, wow.
So this is just an automatic thing that especially women tend to do, right? Like we automatically do that external, okay, who's most important to me? And it brings women to tears when I do this activity in these rooms because they go, how did I not even consider myself? I wouldn't have even been in the top 10 or 15 or 20. I would have continued going and talking about, all of these other priorities in my life. And so if you're not going to take care of yourself and give to yourself, who will?
That felt like a smack in the face. I mean, in a good
Sorry.
way.
It was
In
more
a
of a
good way.
love tap.
I'm reading this book right now by Eric Fromm. It's called The Art of Loving. And they're talking about how a lot of people, especially when they think that love is like self love is selfish, that they have absolutely none. Um, and so it's really making me think like, to your point, you are still a human being. And if you can love yourself and treat yourself the way that you need to be treated, you can do that for everyone. But if you
Yes.
can't love yourself, how do you do that for anyone else?
Yeah, I always say that taking care of yourself is self-full, not selfish.
It's a really good way to put it. That's definitely going to be one of the quotes on the Instagram page.
Awesome.
Okay. So many women feel like saying no automatically creates conflict. How do you help people reframe no as clarity instead?
Well, for me, one of the things that I use no as, like if I receive a no, especially like because that's a big part of my job. I get rejected all the time. And to me, I just always look at it as redirection. So it's like no, not right now, or no, there's something better. So I think when we receive no, we can reframe it, right? It goes back to that whole mindset, concept that you talked about. But when we start saying no, if we have been in a cycle of people pleasing and being everything to everybody, and then all of a sudden you start saying no to things, then people might perceive you as being rude or short or unkind or unfriendly. But the people that are meant for you will respect it. And they will probably respect you more for it and go, okay, like I understand this because no is a one word boundary, basically, right? Like you're just saying what you're not willing to participate in. And boundaries are not designed to push people away, they're designed to keep the right people in. And so I think if you have that framework or kind of that mindset around it, it kind of completely changes how you interact and use the word no.
I think that's a really great way to put it because a lot of the time when you are a people pleaser and you have that word no or someone says no to you, you feel either unimportant or you feel like the people that you have so carefully brought into your life are going to walk away from you. But what you don't realize is a lot of those people are only there because they're benefiting from you, from your people pleasing.
And I think one of the things that especially women tend to do, I actually just did a podcast on this, is over explain. We feel like we have to over explain why we can't do something. And I coach women all of the time, less is more. The more concise and clear you are in your message, it actually makes you seem like more of an authority, versus this need to over explain. And on the flip side, narcissists and toxic people tend to over explain when they're lying. So less is more. And so a simple no can be really powerful. Like, I don't think we have to be over explaining ourselves all of the time just because we don't want to participate in something that we used to, actively participate in.
It's funny. I mean, I still stop myself these days, and I know that I don't need to because I've surrounded myself with people who understand me and are like minded, and they do it too. But every time I tell somebody that I don't I'm not available for something, my knee jerk reaction is saying, hey, blah, 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 and then some. And it's exhausting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I love that phrase, "I'm not available." Because then you don't have to say what it is that you're doing or not. You're just not available. And I don't think it needs to be over explained or explained any further than that. It's a really great line. And so getting comfortable with different phrases and things that work for you, because oftentimes people are like, well, if I'm free, it doesn't, and I don't want to go, then I have to say why I don't want to go. No, you don't. You can just say I'm not available.
And it's not going to hurt anyone's feelings. I used to be so worried about what someone was going to come back and say after I set that boundary. And there are certain types of people, right? The ones that are going to accept it and say, okay, cool, that's great. And then there's the other people where they kind of lash out at you. And those are the ones that I don't want to go and read a text message. And so I've been conditioned to not look at my phone after I send one of the text messages that say, no, I'm not available. How do you get around that? Or have you ever had that experience?
Well, those are probably some of the people that I've decided to implement block of unsubscribed. Personally, I mean, I think we have to really evaluate. I think there's a lot of taboo, especially for women, of not continuing friendships. I just ended a long-time friendship last week. And I wish her well. I'm not upset. I don't have any hard feelings. It just wasn't, we weren't growing in the same direction any longer. And that's not taboo. I actually think it's a powerful thing when you do begin to know yourself enough to know what you are willing to allow in your life and what you're not. And I think especially as women, it's like, well, you should just be grateful that, that you have the friends that you have. And what you start to notice when you do kind of start to weed out people that, and I think we also overuse the word toxic, right? Not everybody's toxic. They just might not be right for you at this point in your life anymore. And that's okay. I also learned recently that we regenerate all of our cells like every 7 years. So basically we're
Mhm.
becoming a whole new person every 7 years. Like I don't know anyone that has all of the same friends that they had in childhood, right? Like that would almost be weird. So we do grow and evolve, and so do our friendships. And when you start to remove the ones that are no longer aligned, the ones that are healthy and growing, they flourish. And then you can welcome in more like that.
I really like that. I have been going through this period of kind of sloughing off the dead skin, if you will. I don't want to call friendships dead skin, but allowing what is meant to come back in is kind of this time period, and I'm really enjoying it because the people that were not in alignment just kind of stopped reaching out, and it feels good because I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
You've spoken about leadership showing up in some very practical ways. What does healthy leadership actually look like when it comes to rest or vacation time or just stepping away?
Yeah, I mean, I think leading by example is huge. And gosh, it was only about 10 years ago when I took my first actual vacation from work where I unplugged. I still snuck my iPad, but I didn't obsessively check emails. I was in Asia, I was in Thailand, and so I didn't have Wi-Fi everywhere I went. So it was very intentional, like only back at the hotel. And for me, I feel like that does set the example for the people and the team that you're leading. And prior to that, like I was setting the example that you had to be burning the candle at both ends. And that's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody. So I think it's important to give people that because, like I said, like you're looking at what your leader is doing and that's setting the expectation for you. And good leaders, I feel like, empower people to be their best. And, for example, when I released my first book, I was still working in corporate. And I worked in an industry, in an environment where extracurricular activities or things, projects that you were working on were really frowned upon. And I was so fortunate to have a leader and a boss who was incredibly supportive. I remember sitting down at dinner with her, so scared and nervous to tell her that I was writing this book and it was going to be coming out in a few months. And she literally was like, I am so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait to read it. She flew in from New York for the book launch party, like so supportive. And she had the idea, like, I'm a very fast worker. I'm very productive. I can get a lot done, like more than I think like 99.9% of people. I took like an aptitude test on this. So, and she always had this um idea. I think it's a book called like the 4 minute work week or something, or the four minute day,
Or
something like, or
day. Okay.
4 hour work week, I
4 hour
think.
work week.
And she was like, you are one of those people where you can get so much done. And she's like, I want people to have things outside of work that they are interested in because it makes you more focused when you come back to work. So that was a very long-winded answer to, come back to how important rest, checking out, doing things that do light you up and fuel fuel your soul, however you want to look at it, so that you can show up your best when you are leading.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it too, because I look at some of the people that are in my corporate world who just kill themselves all day, every day, and they don't have anything that they go do. And so there's no reason to leave their desk. And that scares me because that means that you're not putting your best foot forward every single day, too.
You have to have your unsubscribe moments, if you will. You have to take that mute. If you think about a vacation as a mute moment from work, if you take a 7-day vacation, we need that. We need that break. It helps you come back with more clarity. It's really powerful.
How do you feel about the vacation policies that they have these days that are, what is it? Like you have as an unlimited PTO. Do you feel like that keeps people working, or do you think that it encourages people to leave?
So I haven't looked at the statistics on that for a while. I think it's a very enticing concept for people, but I think the statistics show that people use even fewer days when they have unlimited vacation. So I think it's interesting. I would love to hear like a CHRO or a CPO kind of talk about the stats on that and how that's actually working. But if people do have unlimited vacation, and then I think if you do have unlimited vacation, what tends to happen is you might be working remotely from somewhere, but you're not actually on vacation.
Yeah. Or feel like you have to answer every single message that you wind up getting. I feel the same way. I want to go back to the conversation that you had with your boss when you were talking about your book, because this is something that I struggle with now too, is really being able to talk about what it is that you're building and not being afraid of it. Not necessarily imposter syndrome, but getting used to talking about it like it's a fact. Like, I wrote this book and this is who I am, even if it's not true quite yet. Like, how do you start embodying it and um like acting like the woman that you want to be?
Mm. Yeah, like dress for the part you want, kind of that whole concept. Yeah, I think it can take some courage to step into something new. Like you said, if whether it's writing a book or starting a podcast, especially if people do have a corporate job. I think it's not waiting until you're ready, right? Fear, like perfectionism, waiting until it's perfect and waiting until you're ready. You have to just start because it's the repetitions that help you get in there, right? Like starting the writing is going to make you a better writing. Starting the podcast, I actually tell people, please don't listen to the first 6 episodes of my podcast. They are so cringe. But if I didn't just rip off the band-aid and I kept waiting for it to be perfect, I still wouldn't have a podcast today. And so that's the only way you're going to get better and keep stepping into these things that you want to do is by doing it.
I like that. Okay. So what identity do you see women most needing to unsubscribe from before that they can actually lead in a way that feels like them?
Mhm. I think it has to do with minimizing their potential. And I know this isn't necessarily a leadership answer, but one thing that bothers me so much is when women say, I'm just a mom, like I'm just a stay-at-home mom. And I feel like that minimization, I mean, that's not a job I would ever want or could ever probably do. I would be terrible at it. And so I think that we have to, embrace the work that we're doing, whether you are leading a team of one, whether you're an individual contributor, whether you are a mom raising kids at home. It's, I think too often women minimize the work that they're doing. And I think that needs to stop.
I feel like that goes back to a lot of that self love, but also the hustle mindset, right? Where you think and you compare yourself to all of the other people that are functioning on a daily basis because you see it on TV and Instagram that someone's doing the grocery shopping and mowing the lawn and taking care of kids and working a 10-hour day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like you can only be so much. But when you are that person, when you are a mom, loving yourself and knowing that, hey, this is a job. This is a thing that I do. And it's when you can say it with conviction and authority, it comes out a lot differently.
Yeah, well, because in my coaching, oftentimes what I see is the women that are in that position, then the kids grow. And so they put their kids first, and then their spouse or partner, and then themselves always last. And so then the kids grow up, they graduate, they leave the house, and now the relationship at home with the partner or spouse struggles because they don't really know each other anymore. The mom has lost all sense of who she is, what she likes, what brings her joy, what lights her up, what brings her enlightenment. And it's this whole process of almost like starting over and finding yourself again. So I think it's important to tap into those things throughout that whole journey.
How do you think that we can bring awareness to this? Because it's not something that people really think about until they're struck with a moment like that.
Yeah. I think it starts small. So I get this question often, especially in like my women leadership keynotes, in my speaking engagements, the sessions. They're like, "What if I can't go get a mani pedi? Because I just don't have the time." I'm like, "Start small. Take a bath at home. Take 10 minutes and write in your journal. Sit with your coffee in the morning, with nothing on around you, and pay attention to your, all of your senses, like how it smells, how it tastes, how the cup feels, how you see the steam coming off, how it tastes, all of it. So sometimes it can be just taking those small moments to really tap into spending time with yourself. And it doesn't have to be a whole big to do. Like I have the luxury and privilege of being able to take solo vacations by myself, but that might feel like way too much of a stretch. So just start small. Maybe it is, like I said, a bath or 10 minutes of alone time journaling or doing a meditation or a workout, whatever that looks like for you.
Like that being present, learning how
Yeah.
to, yeah. Um, for more of the people that aren't necessarily, and I'll call it aware or awakened, because these are women who have become awake and have recognized that there is something missing or somebody that they want to start becoming. How do you feel like you can start talking to those people that aren't awake yet?
That's why I think unsubscribe is so approachable. It's such an approachable, everyday, real life filter that everybody can relate to, because I think of all of the stories that I share in there of my own or of other people's, there's something in there that everyone can relate to. And so I think it's a really approachable place to start so that you can, and you can literally go chapter by chapter, right? So again, if you are overwhelmed and you don't have a lot of time, you can just go one chapter at a time, and it goes by pretty fast. And then you can just take the action steps at the end and start to create that awareness. It's really what it's designed to do.
I like that a lot. Oh, this is a good one. So, a common fear for a lot of people is if I slow down or let go, everything will fall apart. How do you help people work through that?
Well, I can go back to that example that I used of the first time of me actually checking out of work. When I checked out for that week, because that was kind of what I feared of, like, oh my gosh, all the wheels are gonna fall off when I come back. And guess what? Everything was still there. Right. So sometimes it's just a little bit of that trial and error. And again, maybe you don't have to do a full week off, right? To check out or feel like if you're gonna let go of that or check out. Maybe it's starting smaller, maybe it's, a day and see how that feels. But I think I think that's just a lie that we tell ourselves.
Yeah,
Make us feel important. But it's all still gonna be there.
the world can go on without you,
Yeah.
unfortunately. All right. So, for the woman listening who feels stretched thin but is unsure of where to start for right now, what is one small unsubscribe action that they can take to create relief?
Oh my gosh. So one of the things that like I mean there's so many, and that's what I love about this concept is that it is such a broad concept and it's such a simple concept that everybody understands, but the feedback that I'm getting is so vast in the way that people are applying it. So, for me, one small thing that I think is really important right now when people are feeling really, I think you used the word overwhelmed, feeling this, like, I think there's so much noise happening right now with everything. Taking a mute from social media or the news. So like when we think about it, unsubscribe doesn't apply just to technology, but I like this because everybody understands the concept of technology. But if you could apply any one of the pillars to social media or the news. So maybe you need to just not engage. Like I made this swap in 2020 where I stopped watching the news in the morning because it felt like Groundhog Day. Like every day I was like, oh my gosh, more of the same, more of the same. And it was leaving me like starting every morning just feeling off and anxious. And then so for me, that was like a permanent swap. So you could, instead of, watching the news, read a book in the morning. You can remove a social media app from your phone and only access it on your computer or your iPad during certain times when it's not as accessible. For me, I did a full block of TikTok. I completely removed it. I deactivated my account. And guess what? My life has not gotten worse. Or you can manage it. You can manage, I know some people will say, hey, I can only do social media for 1 hour a day or, whatever that looks like for you. So I think there's that's such a hard question because I could answer it with 10,000 different answers. But I just feel like that's one area where a lot of people are feeling that overwhelm right now.
For sure. Absolutely. Are these all in your book that you talk about options?
I give a lot of different options. One of my favorite spreads in the book is in the swap um, chapter where I give 2 pages of ideas of swap this for that. And I'm so curious to see what resonates with people, particularly from that page, because we spent a lot of time on that. It's really fun.
I love it. Well, I'm really excited to read your book. Um, Thank you so much for being here today. If you are going to leave our listeners with one last word of advice, what would it be?
Oh, so I often like to end with a dadism. I mentioned my dad earlier. And so he always said he had these dadisms, I call them, not to be confused with a dad joke, because they're not funny. They're life lessons, although they're both poorly timed and well intended. So he had one that was his most famous. And this I actually do have in my second book. I'm my favorite, The Guided Journal. You are the architect of your own destiny. And so what I mean by that, and unsubscribe really does come into play with this, is that we can't always control what happens, but you can control how you respond.
That's a good one. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Jenny.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So, if this conversation resonated with you, I want you to notice what came up as you listened. What are you holding on to out of habit rather than alignment? Or where are you doing more than is actually required of you? And what might it look like to just unsubscribe from one expectation that is no longer serving you? You can find Jenny's work, her podcast, and information about her upcoming book, Unsubscribe, down in the show notes. And if you're craving space to explore these patterns more deeply, the Radiant Women's Collective meets the second and the fourth Wednesday of every month. It is a place to slow down, to reflect, and to practice choosing yourself without judgment. The link is also below. And until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, you were never meant to dim your light. Thanks for tuning in and being here, for healing out loud, and for walking this path beside me. If this episode cracked something open or helped you remember a part of yourself, pass it on and share it with someone you love. For more support, free resources, or the next steps to your journey, head over to my website, myhealingisyourhealing.com. And if you loved today's conversation, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your words help this space grow,
and help more women find their way home to themselves. If I was your muse today, then my healing is your healing. Until next time.